for this week, our discussion will focus on the different kinds of research. I will start off with a general overview on the differences between qualitative and quantitative research. And then from there, I will focus on qualitative research only, its advantages and disadvantages. And then from there, I will continue the discussion with the different kinds of qualitative research. And then probably next week, kasi hindi talaga aabutin ng oras for this week, I will continue the discussion with quantitative research and the different kinds of quantitative research. Okay, so let's start. Under the K-12 curriculum, the learning competencies or the, anong tawag dito? The learning objectives that we are targeting for this week is to differentiate quantitative from qualitative research, and then from there describe the characteristics, strengths, weaknesses, and kinds of qualitative research. So related to that, the essential questions that we will be answering for this day at the end of this lesson is: in what way is qualitative research different from quantitative research? And of course, what are the different kinds of qualitative research, their characteristics, how are they different to the other kinds of qualitative research, and of course, if you can point out some of their advantages and limitations. So let's start. So, like I said, I'm going to start with an overview of the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. So, they are both kinds of researches, pero depending on their advantages and disadvantages, kung mag-work siya doon sa topic na you have in mind. So, let's start with the different kinds or types of questions that you will encounter in these two kinds of research. So for qualitative research, very probing yung type of questions niya. And when we say probing, it means that it gives you the ability to really ask in-depth questions, mas malalalim na tanong ang pwede mong tanungin sa qualitative research, which allows you to gather data na mas malalim din. Okay? So mas, in terms of quality, mas maganda yung quality ng data if you are going to use qualitative research. Okay? Kasi when you are doing qualitative research, the most common tool or the most common way of gathering data is by conducting interviews. And when we conduct interviews, syempre face-to-face yan or very personal yung magiging interaction between the researcher and the respondent. So, yung mga questions niya, nakafocus lang doon sa specific na respondent na tinarget niya for an interview. Hindi siya katulad ng quantitative research wherein the questions that you will be preparing should be general, should be applicable to a lot of people. Kumbaga, hindi siya personal, hindi siya specific doon sa iisang tao. The questions that you will use dapat understandable at applicable sa nakararami. And because ang tinatarget natin is applicable sa napakaraming tao, ang nangyayari sa questions in quantitative research is that hindi sila ganon ka-probing in comparison to qualitative research. Dahil applicable to everyone, most of the time, very generic yung mga questions in quantitative research. At dahil generic siya, masyadong mababaw yung quality or yung content ng data na nagagather natin in quantitative research. So for example, in quantitative research, ang common tool in gathering data is by conducting surveys. So for example, balik tayo sa Jollibee. Si Jollibee wants to know kung yung mga customers ba niya ay satisfied sa kanyang products and services. So si Jollibee, nag-conduct siya ng survey identifying if how many people or if majority of the customers are satisfied with the products and services. So, pwede siyang mag-conduct ng survey nun. Are you satisfied? Yes or no? Yan. So, nakakuha siya ng 80% na satisfaction rate. Okay na siya doon. Pero hindi niya alam specifically in what way naging satisfied yung mga tao. At yung 20% na yun, in what way are they not satisfied? So yung ganong this very specific question can only be achieved by conducting qualitative research. So mag-i-interview ka. Out of dun sa 80 na yon, ilan yung pwede mong i-interview doon para malaman mo ano yung mga aspects or ano yung mga factors that contributed to their satisfaction. And you can also conduct interview doon sa 20% na hindi satisfied para malaman mo in what way or ano yung mga factors that influences their dissatisfaction. Kaya some people, in order for them to really get good data, they use a combination of qualitative and quantitative research. So yun yung tinatawag nating mixed approach. They will do a survey, and then from doon sa mga na-survey nila, they will be choosing select people na i-interviewin nila para meron silang qualitative data. So yun ang pinakamagandang uri ng data in research. Kasi it maximizes a lot of respondents. At the same time, yung quality of data napaka-ganda. Okay? So another difference between qualitative and quantitative is of course the sample size. So itong sample size na to, I'm very sure narinig nyo na sa klase ninyo with Miss Zera under Statistics and Probability. So meron kayong sample size, may population size kayo, ayan. So ano nga ba ang pinagkaiba ng sample size between qualitative and quantitative research? So sabi natin, in terms of sample size, konti or very small lang ang sample size ng isang qualitative research. Kasi, like I said, the most common tool in gathering data for qualitative research is by conducting interviews. And you have to, we have to accept the idea that conducting interviews, it takes time. Matagal siya. So, for example, sa isang tao, it will take around 30, 60 minutes, 90 minutes to conduct the interview and to gather the information that you need. Hindi siya katulad ng survey na in 30 minutes, kaya mo makapag-gather ng 20, 30 respondents. Kasi pwedeng sabay-sabay silang magsagot ng survey. Hindi naman siya katulad ng interview na dapat na pwedeng sabay-sabay sila. Diba? So for example, pag nanood kayo nung kay Boy Abunda dati, yung Tonight with Boy Abunda, di ba usually isa-isa lang yung ini-interview niya. Meron lang siyang mga isa or dalawang parang personality na target interview for the day. Kasi it takes time to really get the right answers or to get or to ask the right questions. Hindi siya basta-basta yes or no lang katulad ng survey. Kaya ang population size ng qualitative research is usually small. Just a few, for example, pag binalikan natin yung survey ni Jollibee, doon sa 80% na yon, pwede siya mag-interview ng 5 lang. Tapos doon sa 20%, pwede ulit siyang mag-interview ng another 5 to represent yung mga hindi satisfied. So napaka-konti ng sample size ng qualitative research. At the same time, kaya konti yung sample size ng qualitative research is that usually hindi ganun karami yung pwede mong i-interview. Yung mga considered as experts or considered as part of the respondents, target respondents, hindi sila ganun ka-available. And you have to understand that because interview takes time, syempre i-consider din natin yung mga personal lives ng mga target respondents natin. Yung ganung oras ba, may trabaho sila? If ang target mo ay yung mga teenage moms, di ba, nagsastruggle na nga sila to balance their work and taking care of their child. Tapos, mag-aalat pa sila ng mahabang time para sa'yo. So, nakikiusap tayo or we are asking a huge deal of their time. That's why, usually, very small lang ang qualitative research in terms of sample size. Hindi siya katulad ng quantitative research. Ang quantitative research, usually malalaki. In quantitative research, the more respondents you can ask to answer the survey, the more valid and reliable your data is. You have to remember, quantitative research will use statistics. At kung napapansin ninyo, or kung hindi pa nagbibigay si Teacher Zera, usually malalaki ang sample sizes. Nasa 60, 100, 200, like that. Kasi nga, the more respondents you have, mas reliable yung results na makukuha mo. And the 200 respondents, kaya mo siyang kunin in just one day. So we had before, nagpa-survey kami sa paggamit ng mga generic medicine. I think this was in 2008, during the time na kaka-introduce pa lang ng generic medicine. So ang ginawa namin, tumambay lang kami sa ospital, dun sa outpatient department, yung mga hindi hindi nagsistay sa hospital. Yung outpatient lang, nagpapa-check up lang and then uuwi din agad. In just one day, we were able to get 150 respondents. Ganun siya kabilis. Tambay lang kayo sa isang lugar. Or kung natatandaan nyo dati, before kayo magpunta ng Harbor Point, yung area between the SM downtown at saka Harbor Point, di ba may tulay doon, na halos lahat ng tao dumadaan, tapos maraming nagbibigay ng flyers doon. So ganun lang din, if you will do a survey, you spend 4 hours there, you can gather as much as 100 to 200 respondents for your questionnaire. So very possible ang large sample size in quantitative research. Kasi hindi in 5 minutes kaya na nilang tapusin ang isang survey questionnaire. Hindi katulad ng interview, yung 5 minutes na yon baka hindi pa sumasagot yung kausap mo ng maayos kasi hindi nyo pa nakukuha hindi pa na-establish yung rapport or hindi pa kayo confident or comfortable in talking to each other. So kahit anong tanong mo, hindi pa siya ganun ka-forthcoming when it comes to doon sa mga sagot niya. Okay? So the information per respondent in a qualitative research, so sabi natin, very probing yung type of question niya. Therefore, the quality and the kind of data or information that we can get from the respondents, mas marami compared sa qualitative research. Kasi pag interview, ito yung sets of questions mo. Kung hindi ka satisfied doon sa sagot niya, you can always ask follow-up questions hanggang sa maibigay niya yung hinahanap mong sagot or maibigay niya yung amount of information na kailangan mo for your research. Hindi katulad ng quantitative research. Sa survey, kung ano yung questions na nakasulat sa questionnaire mo, yun at yun lang yun. Sasagutan lang nila yun. So there is no chance for you to ask follow-up questions. So ang information per respondent in a quantitative research varies very much. May mga tao na lahat ng questions sinasagutan, they're willing to add additional information, pero meron namang mga tao na gusto lang masagutan yung survey, so puro yes na lang yung chinekan, or hindi na masyadong inintindi, hindi na masyadong binasa yung questions, minadali na lang yung pagsasagot. So the quality of data talaga in a survey, hindi siya ganon kaganda or kataas yung quality in comparison to qualitative research. Sino naman ang nag-a-administer ng qualitative and quantitative research? Sa qualitative research, it requires skill. As much as possible, you have to have training or you have the skills, necessary skills or expertise to conduct interview. Kung napapansin nyo, hindi lahat ng tao have the skills to really get the right answers or have the skills to really ask the right questions. Diba? Ang tawag dito, si Boy Abunda, he is very popular, I think, because he is one of those people na magaling talaga when it comes to asking questions. To the point na pagkaupo pa lang nung ini-interview niyang artista, nasa unang question pa lang siya, umiiyak na yung artistang kinakausap niya. Kasi ganun ka ganda yung way or yung pagkakatanong niya doon sa question na talagang emotional na kaagad yung respondent niya. So hindi talaga lahat ng tao have that skill. Hindi lahat ng tao have the skill to read in between the lines. Na kapag tinanong mo ang isang respondent ng okay ka ba at ang sinagot niya ay oo, yung oo ba na yun ay talagang oo, okay siya, or merong something sa hand gesture niya, sa facial reactions niya, sa mga alam niyo yun, yung observable na actions ng interviewer, which tells you otherwise na baka hindi naman siya okay. Baka yung okay niya, nangingilid-ngilid na yung mukha niya dun sa mata niya, hindi mo pa napansin. So, automatic ang interpretation mo nung sagot niya, hindi ganun ka-reliable. That's why for qualitative data, it really requires skills in observing people, reading in between the lines, yung tactics and strategies in asking the right questions at the right time, necessary yon for qualitative research. Whereas with quantitative research, it still requires skills, pero hindi ganun ka-demanding sa skills itong quantitative research. Sa quantitative research kasi, may mga available na standardized survey questionnaires or standardized tests. May mga available na. Yun nga lang, yung iba, hindi siya for free. Available siya, pero it comes with a price. So if you're not willing to pay the price, ikaw ang gagawa ng sarili mong survey questionnaire. So yon, it requires skill in asking questions na maiintindihan ng mga respondents mo. Pero pag natapos mo na yung survey na yon, i-disseminate mo na lang siya. Hindi mo na kailangan i-observe yung mga respondents mo while they are answering. You just wait for them to finish answering the questionnaire and then tapos na siya. So, kumbaga, compared sa qualitative research, hindi siya ganun ka-demanding in terms of the skills of the administrator or the researcher. In terms of type of analysis, the qualitative research is very subjective and interpretative. Kaya nga, it requires skills. Kasi if hindi ka sanay to read in between the lines or to read and observe people, to read into their actions, their facial expressions, maaaring magkaroon ng bias doon sa interpretation mo or maaaring hindi mo ma-interpret ng maayos yung data na makokolekt mo. So pag hindi mo siya na-interpret ng maayos, it will affect the validity of your conclusion. Hindi katulad ng quantitative research, it's very statistical. Na kuha mo yung survey, yung bilang ng sumagot ng yes, yung number ng sumagot ng no, yung number ng sumagot ng maybe. You will use a statistical test, katulad nung pinapagawa ni Teacher Zera sa inyo na Z-test or ANOVA or T-test, chi-square like that. And then the number will do the interpretation for you. Diba? Meron siya doon yung critical value. Kapag mas mataas doon sa critical value, it means you accept the hypothesis. Pag mas mababa sa critical value, it means you reject the hypothesis. If it is within this value, there's no correlation. Pag mas mataas dito sa value na to, may positive correlation. Pag mababa dito sa value na to, may negative correlation. So you let the numbers interpret and analyze the data for you. Hindi siya depende sa kung ano ang understanding mo, hindi siya depende kung paano mo na-interpret, hindi siya nakadepende sa kung ano yung na-observe mo na nangyayari within that given time period. Okay? So, when it comes to the reliability of data, if you don't have the necessary skills, nagiging unreliable yung data in qualitative research. Hindi siya katulad in quantitative research because we are using statistics. As long as tama yung naging computation mo doon sa statistical test, automatic, valid yung magiging result mo. And right now, we have a lot of applications and software which will do the computation, statistical computation for you. So meron na sa Excel na option to compute for ANOVA and T-test and chi-square and all the other statistical tests. Meron pang mga ibang paid applications and softwares that can really do all of these statistical tests for you. So kung ayaw mong mag-manual computation, pwede namang you let the computer do the computation for you. Okay? And then of course, types of research, anong tawag dito? In qualitative research, it's more of exploratory. When we say exploratory, it means you just want to explore a certain phenomenon or to explore a certain group of people. You want to know ano yung mga experiences nila, personal experiences. Are they experiencing challenges in some aspects of their lives? You want to know their opinion about a certain topic. Or ano yung nangyari sa kanila during that time. So that is exploratory. So for example, you want to know, you want to help teenage moms, yung mga nabuntis ng maaga, you want to help them. And you want to know ano yung mga areas of their lives that they're really struggling with or they're having challenges or difficulties. Tapos from there, you will come up with a program na matutulungan sila. So pwede yun, qualitative, exploratory. You are just going to check or to interview ano nga ba yung everyday routine nila, ano yung mga nahihirapan sila, ano yung mga okay sila, meron ba silang ano yun, mga regrets or yung mga ganong tanong just to have a better idea or understanding on these kinds of people. Pero hindi natin ma-identify if there is a causal relationships between them. Another example, for example, you want to know yung everyday life and experiences ng mga pamilya na merong cancer patients within their family. So for example, yung kapatid, yung ate, kuya, or nanay and tatay nila ay merong cancer. So you just want to know kung ano yung experience nila dealing with cancer. So ano yung mga areas na nahihirapan sila, paano nila na-overcome yung challenges na yon, paano nila ginawan ng solusyon yung problema na yon. That's qualitative research. Pero hindi niya ma-identify if there is a difference between the experiences of families ng may mga stage 1 cancer at saka yung mga families na merong stage 3 cancer. Magkaiba na yon. So, in that case, more of quantitative na siya. Kasi you are already describing na merong, kung meron mang difference between the two kinds of cases. So, hindi na, inaalam na niya kung merong relationship or may influence yung gravity ng sakit doon sa experiences ng family members. Na habang mas lumalala yung sakit, mas nagiging madami yung challenges ng family members compared dun sa mga hindi pa ganun ka-chronic yung kanilang sakit, hindi pa ganun kadami yung kanilang na-experience na difficulties. So that is already causal relationship. And in that case, mas appropriate na to use quantitative research. Okay? So ayan ang differences between qualitative and quantitative research. Now, let's move forward doon specifically sa qualitative research. Before I move forward sa qualitative research, I'll give the time for you to raise your hands or to type in your questions, clarifications before I move forward. Ayan. So, mukhang wala namang questions na. Okay. So, now let's move forward to what qualitative research is all about. Specifically, qualitative research. Sabi niya dito, qualitative research involves the use and collection of a variety of empirical materials such as case study, personal experience, introspective, life stories, interviews, observational, historical, interaction, and visual texts that describe routine and problematic moments and meanings in individual lives. So based on these meanings, sabi niya, yung kind of data that we can use for qualitative research is more of observing people, interviewing people, asking for their opinions or introspectives, asking for their narratives, ano yung nangyari sa buhay nila, historical and life story, and then of course included yung visual text. So when we talk about visual text here, yung iba kasi hindi na available for interview, pero meron silang mga naiwan na diaries or journals that will give an idea of what is happening during that time. For example, nung panahon ng World War II, wala na tayo halos ma-interview na mga respondents who are survivors of World War II. Most of them patay na. So how are we going to establish kung ano yung buhay nila in Zambales during World War II? So we can analyze mga diary or journals kung meron mang available during that time. So hindi natin kailangang mag-rely solely on interview. Pwede tayong gumamit ng visual text. Pero like I said, very common tong interview at saka observation. And ang purpose niya is just to describe, di ba sabi nga natin, exploratory in nature ang qualitative research. We just want to describe their everyday routine, ano yung mga habitual actions nila, ano yung usual na ginagawa nila for the day, ano yung mga na-experience nilang challenges or difficulties, and how do they find meaning in individual lives. Later on, magbibigay ako ng specific example. Okay? And qualitative research, one of its advantages is that they are actually cheaper in comparison to quantitative research. So sabi natin, di ba, in quantitative research, usually you have to conduct surveys for a large number of people. And surveys, they take time. So kung, at saka, syempre, gagastos ka. Yung survey mo, kailangan mong i-print out. At kung 200 respondents ang target mo, it means yung survey na gagamitin mo to gather data, it has to be reprinted or reproduced 200 times. So gagastos at gagastos ka talaga in quantitative research. First-time students, pag kayo ay gumawa ng, anong tawag dito, experimental na quantitative research, you will be using the laboratory, the tools and equipments of the laboratory. Gagastos at gagastos kayo doon. Kailangan yung bumili ng mga chemicals. If you will be doing experimental research doon sa mga laboratory rats, kailangan mo bumili ng daga. Kailangan mo siyang pakainin. Kailangan mo siyang buhayin. Para pagdating ng experimentation mo, okay na okay yung mga laboratory rats mo. Kung hindi available yung chemical, kailangan mo siyang bilhin. So magastos ang quantitative research. Hindi katulad ng qualitative research. Most of the time, hindi ko sinasabing wala kayong gagastusin, pero it is cheaper compared to quantitative research. So kung mag-i-interview kayo at kilala nyo naman yung mga taong target nyo for interview, hindi nyo naman sila kailangang bigyan ng token or hindi nyo naman sila kailangang bayaran. Pwedeng pakainin or meriendahin, may inumin at pagkain habang nag-i-interview kayo. Pero yung gastos nyo comparatively will be lower compared to quantitative research. Okay? And of course, sabi nga natin kanina, very probing yung types of questions ng qualitative research. Therefore, it will allow you to really have a deeper understanding about this group of people, about this phenomenon, why is this happening to them, why are they thinking this way, bakit ganito yung mga paniniwala nila. You can have an in-depth understanding of your respondents because you will be conducting surveys, interviews with them, at you will be spending a lot of time with them. Ang pinakamagandang interview talaga yung hindi madalian, mahaba siya, at hindi lang minsanan. My first interview, my second interview, tapos my third interview. Kasi you are, di ba, pagka may tao kayo na hindi nyo naman kilala, hindi naman kayo ganun ka-comfortable in sharing your ideas or your opinions or your experiences with them. So if you will conduct an interview ng minsan lang, chances are hindi ganun, medyo mababaw pa yung kind of data na makukuha mo from your respondents. Pero habang mas dumadami yung pag-uusap ninyo, habang mas gumahaba, mas nagiging comfortable kayo sa isa't isa. Chances are, mas nagiging detailed at mas nagiging in-depth yung mga sagot ng respondents sa'yo. So pagka ganon, alam mo yun, hindi lang kayo once magkikita, lagi kayong magkikita 2 or 3 or 4 times, mas nakikilala nyo yung respondents nyo. So mas lumalalim yung pagkakaintindi nyo doon sa topic. Hindi katulad ng quantitative research, nakilala mo lang yung tao in just 5 minutes, tapos hindi mo na siya makakausap, hindi mo na siya makikita for the rest of your research. So yung understanding about the people or the phenomenon that you are focusing on, hindi ganon kalalim. Okay? And of course, qualitative research, di ba sabi ko sa inyo dun sa example, it allows or it makes quantitative research more effective and more efficient. Kaya nga may mga tao na nagko-conduct ng mixed research. So meron na silang data that is gathered from quantitative survey, pero mas pinapaganda nila yung result at yung data na nag-gather nila by conducting an additional interview doon sa mga respondents nila sa survey. So yung sa Jollibee, mas naiintindihan na nila na, okay, so satisfied sila doon sa lasa, satisfied sila sa presyo, pero hindi sila satisfied dito sa mga aspects na yun. So mas nagiging meaningful yung data na nag-gather nila. And in terms of limitations or disadvantages naman, anong tawag dito? Qualitative research kasi, sabi nga natin, exploratory siya. So it really cannot tell differences or causal relationships between two factors. So balikan natin yung example ko nung nakaraan na kung may effect ba yung number of hours of sleep in terms of the academic performance of students. In qualitative research, hindi mo talaga siya kayang i-identify. Kasi you are already comparing the impact or the influence of two factors. Ang qualitative research talagang exploratory lang siya. So, ang focus lang niya is i-describe niya yung everyday experiences ng isang student na laging mahaba ang tulog compared sa isang student na laging puyat at konti ang tulog. So, ma-identify niya ano yung mga struggles, yung challenges ng dalawang uri ng student na yon. But kung ang tanong ninyo is if merong effect yun sa kanyang academic performance, hindi siya kayang sagutin or i-establish ng qualitative research. At the same time, because qualitative research only has a very small sample population or sample size, hindi siya enough to be really a representative of the entire population. So for example, in Kalapakuan, meron tayong population size na 10,000. Pag nag-conduct ka ng qualitative research about their experiences living in Kalapakuan at nag-interview ka ng 5 tao, napaka-konti ng 5 tao. 5 residents out of the entire 10,000 population. So pag sinabi nung 5 yun na hindi sila satisfied as a resident in Kalapakuan, it's not enough to really say na yun yung experience ng majority because it is not a representative of the entire population. Wait lang, mag-i-end ang aking meeting.